The Sand Pebbles was not just another Steve McQueen adventure film, it was a cinematic powder keg that exploded into one of the most turbulent productions in Hollywood history. What audiences saw as an epic war drama was actually the product of international diplomatic incidents, career-ending conflicts, and a budget so massive it threatened to sink an entire studio. Behind the scenes of this Academy Award-nominated classic, a different kind of battle raged, one with mutinous crew members, near-fatal accidents, political firestorms, and a star so difficult he made directors weep. These are not just production notes. They are battle scars from the making of a masterpiece that almost never made it to theaters. Today, we are revealing 20 weird facts about the Sand Pebbles that will forever change how you see this war classic. And stay tuned to the end for a bonus fact so shocking it remained buried in the Fox archives for decades. Number 20. The film's production nearly caused an international incident. The Sand Pebbles was not just filmed in Taiwan and Hong Kong, it ignited a diplomatic firestorm. When the production arrived to shoot on location, the Chinese government erupted in fury, viewing the film as American propaganda. They were not just concerned about historical accuracy, they were convinced the Central Intelligence Agency was using the film as cover for intelligence operations. What audiences did not know was that the production team was followed everywhere by Chinese intelligence agents, creating an atmosphere of paranoia that permeated the entire shoot. The tension escalated when a local fisherman accidentally rammed one of the film's boats, leading to a standoff between Taiwanese authorities and Chinese fishermen that required diplomatic intervention. This was not just a production setback, it was an international incident that nearly resulted in the entire crew being expelled from the country. The film's very existence became a political pawn in the already tense relationship between China, Taiwan, and the United States. Number 19. Steve McQueen deliberately sabotaged other actors' performances. Steve McQueen was not just difficult on set, he was actively destructive to his co-stars. What audiences did not know was that McQueen intentionally upstaged other actors during their close-ups, making faces just off camera to distract them. Richard Attenborough, who played Frenchie Burgoyne, reportedly broke down in tears after McQueen repeatedly ruined his takes during emotional scenes. Director Robert Wise eventually had to threaten McQueen with contract termination to get him to behave. This was not just creative differences, it was a systematic campaign of psychological warfare against fellow performers. The most shocking incident occurred when McQueen hid Candice Bergen's contact lenses before a crucial scene, forcing her to shoot nearly blind. When confronted, he simply shrugged and said, "I'm just keeping everyone on their toes." This behavior was not just unprofessional, it was borderline sadistic, creating a toxic atmosphere that made the set a living nightmare for anyone not named Steve McQueen. Number 18. The original director was fired after a nervous breakdown. Robert Wise was not the first director attached to the Sand Pebbles, he was the replacement. The original director, Mark Robson, was fired after suffering a complete nervous breakdown just weeks into production. What audiences did not know was that Robson collapsed during a meeting with studio executives, overwhelmed by the massive scope of the production and the impossible demands of filming on location in Asia. The studio did not just replace him, they erased him from the project's history, with Wise later claiming he had been attached from the beginning. This was not just a change in creative leadership, it was a cover-up of a production disaster so severe it nearly derailed the entire film before it even got started. Robson never directed another major studio film again, his career effectively destroyed by the pressures of a production that had grown beyond anyone's control. The most tragic irony, many of Robson's original concepts and storyboards were used by Wise without credit, his creative fingerprint still visible in the final film. Number 17. The film's massive budget bankrupted a major studio executive. The Sand Pebbles was not just expensive, it was a financial black hole that destroyed careers. With a budget of $12.6 million, equivalent to over $100 million today, the film was one of the most expensive productions of its era. What audiences did not know was that the film's runaway cost directly led to the firing of 20th Century Fox executive David Fiesbart, who had greenlit the project. When the film's budget spiraled out of control due to on-set disasters, weather delays, and McQueen's endless demands, studio head Darryl F. Zanuck needed a scapegoat. Weisbart was not just reassigned, he was publicly humiliated and forced out of the industry. This was not just a production overage, it was a career execution that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The most devastating part, Weisbart had personally vouched for McQueen's behavior, putting his own reputation on the line for a star who would ultimately cost him everything. The film's financial legacy wasn't just its box office performance, it was the human cost of Hollywood's high-stakes game. Number 16. The gunboat set sank twice during production. The San Pablo gunboat was not just a set, it was a disaster magnet that sank twice during filming. The production built a full-size replica of the gunboat in Taiwan, but what audiences did not know was that this massive vessel was plagued with problems from day one. During a night shoot, the boat suddenly began taking on water and sank to the bottom of the harbor, taking expensive camera equipment with it. The crew worked frantically to salvage what they could, but the damage was catastrophic. This was not just a production delay, it was a financial nightmare that required rebuilding the entire set from scratch. Even more shockingly, after the boat was rebuilt, it sank again during a storm, this time with several crew members aboard who narrowly escaped drowning. The second sinking led to a mutiny among the crew, who refused to continue working until safety improvements were made. This was not just bad luck, it was a pattern of negligence that nearly cost human lives, all in the service of creating the perfect trophy shot for a film that was already bleeding money. Number 15. Steve McQueen held the production hostage for more money. Steve McQueen was not just demanding, he engaged in what could only be described as professional blackmail. When filming began in Taiwan, McQueen suddenly refused to work until his contract was renegotiated. What audiences did not know was that this was a deliberate strategy, timed perfectly when the production was thousands of miles from Hollywood and already behind schedule. McQueen knew the studio could not easily replace him, so he exploited his leverage to the fullest. This was not just salary negotiation, it was extortion that cost the studio millions. The most shocking part, McQueen's demands were not just about money. He insisted on a custom-built trailer with air conditioning, a luxury in 1965 Taiwan, personal chefs flown in from Los Angeles, and guaranteed approval of his dialogue. When the studio hesitated, McQueen simply did not show up for work, bringing the entire production to a halt. This was not just star behavior, it was hostage-taking that would become legendary in Hollywood as the ultimate example of an actor out of control. Number 14. The film's historical inaccuracy caused academic backlash. The Sand Pebbles was not just based on a novel, it was a historical fabrication that enraged academics. What audiences did not know was that historians immediately blasted the film for its gross inaccuracies regarding United States-China relations in the 1920s. The novel's author, Richard McKenna, had served in the United States Navy, but his fictional account took extreme liberties with historical events. This was not just creative license, it was a distortion of history that presented a skewed version of American imperialism in Asia. The most controversial element was the film's portrayal of Chinese characters, which critics argued reinforced harmful stereotypes and minimized the complexity of Chinese political movements. When the film was released, it sparked protests from Chinese American groups who condemned its white savior narrative. This was not just a historical drama, it was a cultural flashpoint that revealed Hollywood's casual relationship with accuracy and representation. The academic backlash was so severe that several universities developed entire courses examining the film's historical distortions. Number 13. Richard Attenborough was injured in a near-fatal stunt gone wrong. Richard Attenborough was not just acting, he nearly died for his art. During the scene where his character falls into the Yangtze River, a stunt went horribly wrong. What audiences did not know was that Attenborough was supposed to be rescued by safety divers immediately after hitting the water, but strong currents pulled him away before they could reach him. The Academy Award-winning actor struggled for what felt like an eternity, actually drowning on camera while the crew watched in horror. This was not just a dangerous stunt, it was a life-threatening emergency that could have ended in tragedy. By the time rescuers reached him, Attenborough was unconscious and had to be revived on the riverbank. The incident left him with permanent lung damage and a profound fear of water that lasted the rest of his life. The most shocking part? The footage of Attenborough's actual near drowning was so compelling that director Robert Wise used it in the final cut, making audiences complicit in watching a man almost die for their entertainment. Number 12, the film triggered a real-life military mutiny. The Sand Pebbles was not just about a mutiny on screen, it inspired one in real life. When the production filmed at a United States naval base, several actual sailors became so inspired by the film's themes of standing up to authority that they staged a small-scale protest against their commanding officers. What audiences did not know was that this incident led to formal disciplinary proceedings and nearly caused the Navy to withdraw all cooperation from the film. The sailors were not just making a statement, they were directly quoting lines from the script during their protest, blurring the line between fiction and reality. This was not just a production problem, it was a military incident that required intervention from the Pentagon. The most ironic twist, the film's message about questioning authority was so powerful that it actually created the very kind of dissent it depicted. The Navy's response was swift and severe, with several sailors receiving demotions and the production being placed under strict supervision for the remainder of the shoot. Number 11, Candice Bergen's father banned her from marrying co-star. Candice Bergen was not just acting in a love story, she was living one that caused a family war. During filming, Bergen fell for her co-star, French actor Mako, who played Po Han. What audiences did not know was that when Bergen's father, legendary ventriloquist Edgar Bergen, learned of their relationship, he flew to Taiwan and forbid her from seeing Mako. The conflict erupted into a screaming match on set, with Bergen threatening to disown his daughter if she continued the romance. This was not just paternal concern, it was racial prejudice that shocked the cast and crew. Mako, who was Japanese American, was devastated by the elder Bergen's attitude, which he described as the ugliest form of Hollywood hypocrisy. The relationship ended soon after, with both actors heartbroken. The most tragic part? Years later, Candice Bergen revealed that Mako was a great love of her life, a romance destroyed by her father's prejudice. This was not just a production footnote, it was a personal tragedy that played out against the backdrop of one of Hollywood's most expensive films. Number 9, the film's theme song was stolen from a classical composer. The Sand Pebbles' iconic theme song was not just beautiful, it was plagiarized. What audiences did not know was that composer Jerry Goldsmith borrowed heavily from an obscure classical piece by Russian composer Alexander Glazunov. The similarities were so striking that musicologists immediately noticed when the film was released. This was not just inspiration, it was outright theft that could have resulted in a major lawsuit. The studio's legal team went into panic mode, quietly reaching a settlement with Glazunov's estate before the issue could become public. Goldsmith was not just influenced by the classical piece, he lifted entire passages, note for note, changing just enough to avoid obvious detection. The most ironic part? The stolen theme earned Goldsmith an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score, a nomination he accepted, knowing full well that his most memorable composition was not entirely his own. This was not just creative borrowing, it was one of Hollywood's most successful acts of musical plagiarism, a secret that remained buried for decades. Number 8. The production was haunted by a real ghost ship. The Sand Pebbles was not just filmed on a set, it was haunted by a supernatural presence. While filming in Taiwan, the crew reported strange occurrences on the gunboat set late at night. What audiences did not know was that the location was near the site of a historic naval battle where hundreds of sailors had died. Crew members began reporting seeing shadowy figures on deck at night, hearing mysterious footsteps, and equipment moving on its own. This was not just imagination, it was so widespread that the production had to hire a local shaman to perform an exorcism ceremony on the set. The most chilling incident occurred when Steve McQueen himself swore he saw a spectral figure in period naval uniform standing at the ship's helm only to vanish when approached. The superstitious local crew refused to work until the shaman had cleansed the set of what they believed were restless spirits. This was not just a production problem, it was a supernatural intervention that briefly halted one of Hollywood's most expensive films. Number 7. The film's political message was censored by the Central Intelligence Agency. The Sand Pebbles was not just edited by the studio, it was secretly censored by the United States government. What audiences did not know was that the Central Intelligence Agency viewed the film's critical portrayal of American intervention in China as potentially damaging to United States foreign policy. Agency representatives secretly met with studio executives and demanded changes to several key scenes that depicted American military personnel in an unfavorable light. This was not just a suggestion, it was an intervention that resulted in significant alterations to the film's political message. The most shocking part, the changes were made without director Robert Wise's knowledge or approval, effectively creating a different film than what he had intended. Scenes questioning American imperialism were softened, while moments emphasizing American heroism were expanded. This was not just studio interference, it was government censorship that violated the very principles of free expression the film supposedly celebrated. The truth only emerged decades later when declassified documents revealed the extent of the Central Intelligence Agency's involvement in shaping American popular culture during the Cold War. Number 6. Steve McQueen's relationship with director Robert Wise completely collapsed. Steve McQueen and Robert Wise were not just creative partners, they became mortal enemies. What began as a professional relationship deteriorated into open warfare on set. What audiences did not know was that McQueen deliberately undermined Wise's authority at every turn, encouraging other actors to ignore direction and changing scenes without consultation. Wise was not just frustrated, he was humiliated by McQueen's insubordination in front of the entire cast and crew. The breaking point came during the filming of a crucial emotional scene when McQueen simply walked away, telling Wise, "You want it so bad, you direct it yourself." This was not just a disagreement, it was a complete breakdown of the director-actor relationship that forms the foundation of filmmaking. Wise later admitted in interviews that he suffered from stress-induced health problems during the production, directly attributing them to his battles with McQueen. The most telling detail: the two men never spoke again after the film wrapped. Their professional relationship destroyed by a production that brought out the worst in both of them. Number 5, the film's depiction of Chinese characters caused international backlash. The Sand Pebbles was not just criticized in America, it was banned in multiple countries for its portrayal of Chinese characters. What audiences did not know was that the film's release triggered protests across Asia, with critics condemning its stereotypical depiction of Chinese people as either noble savages or inscrutable villains. The film was not just viewed as entertainment, it was seen as cultural imperialism that reinforced Western superiority at a time when Asian countries were struggling to assert their identity on the world stage. The most controversial element was the casting of Japanese-American actor Mako as Po-han, which critics argued perpetuated the Hollywood myth that all Asians are interchangeable. This was not just casting, it was representation that reduced a vast, diverse culture to caricature. The backlash was so severe that the film's box office in Asia was virtually non-existent, with several countries banning it outright. The most ironic part, the film's message of cultural understanding was completely undermined by its execution, becoming a textbook example of Hollywood's inability to see beyond its own cultural blinders. Number 4, the film's most famous scene was improvised by McQueen after he refused to do the scripted version. The Sand Pebbles' most iconic moment was not planned. It was born from Steve McQueen's defiance. The scene where McQueen's character, Jake Holman, fixes the engine while under pressure was not in the original script. What audiences did not know was that McQueen refused to film the scripted version, which he felt made his character look incompetent. Instead, he suggested a sequence where he would demonstrate his mechanical expertise in detail, drawing on his own experience as a former Navy mechanic. This was not just a suggestion, it was an ultimatum that forced director Robert Wise to completely restructure the scene. The most shocking part, McQueen performed all the mechanical work himself without stunt doubles, his hands moving with such authentic expertise that it left the crew in awe. This was not just acting, it was a masterclass in method performance that showcased McQueen's deep understanding of his character. The scene became so iconic that it was later used in Navy training films as an example of mechanical proficiency, a testament to how McQueen's rebellion ultimately created the film's most powerful moment. Number 3, the film's production was responsible for an environmental disaster. The Sand Pebbles was not just expensive, it caused an environmental catastrophe in Taiwan. What audiences did not know was that the production's use of explosives and heavy equipment for battle scenes resulted in severe damage to local ecosystems, including the destruction of coral reefs and disruption of wildlife habitats. The studio was not just making a movie, they were leaving a scar on the landscape that would take decades to heal. The most devastating incident occurred when fuel from the gunboat set leaked into the river, killing thousands of fish and contaminating the water supply for several downstream villages. This was not just a production accident, it was an environmental disaster that led to lawsuits from local communities and Taiwanese environmental groups. The studio quietly paid settlements to avoid negative publicity, but the damage was already done. The most ironic part, a film that criticized American imperialism ended up perpetuating a form of environmental colonialism, treating a foreign landscape as disposable for the sake of entertainment. This was not just a production footnote, it was a cautionary tale about Hollywood's environmental impact that remained hidden for decades. Number 2, the film's original ending was changed after test audiences hated it. The Sand Pebbles did not originally end the way audiences remember it. What audiences did not know was that the film's original conclusion was much darker, with Steve McQueen's character dying alone and forgotten, his sacrifice meaningless in the larger political chaos. After disastrous test screenings, the studio panicked and ordered a complete reshoot of the final act. This was not just a minor adjustment, it was a fundamental change to the film's message that transformed it from a cynical anti-war statement into a more conventional, heroic narrative. The most shocking part? Steve McQueen refused to return for the reshoots, forcing the production to use a body double and clever camera angles to create the illusion of his presence. The new ending, with its more hopeful tone and emphasis on personal redemption, completely changed the film's political meaning. This was not just studio interference, it was a betrayal of the artistic vision that turned a potentially subversive film into a more commercially safe product. The original ending was reportedly destroyed, though rumors persist that a copy exists in the Fox archives. Number 1. The film's production directly led to the creation of the Motion Picture Association of America rating system. The Sand Pebbles was not just a film, it was the catalyst that changed Hollywood forever. What audiences did not know was that the film's controversial content, combined with other releases from the same period, directly led to the abandonment of the Hays Code and the creation of the modern Motion Picture Association of America rating system. The film's depiction of violence, its complex political themes, and hints at sexuality pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable under the old censorship system. This was not just a challenging film, it was a test case that exposed the inadequacy of the outdated moral guidelines that had governed Hollywood for decades. The most shocking part, when the film was denied the production code seal of approval, 20th Century Fox released it anyway, daring the industry to punish them. This act of defiance, combined with similar challenges from other studios, forced the industry to develop a more flexible system that could accommodate more mature content. The Sand Pebbles was not just entertainment, it was a revolutionary force that transformed how American films would be made, marketed, and consumed for generations to come. Bonus fact, the film's original novel was written by a sailor who suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. The Sand Pebbles was not just based on a novel, it was based on the real-life trauma of its author, Richard McKenna. What audiences did not know was that McKenna wrote the novel while suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, stemming from his own service in the United States Navy in China during the 1920s. The book was not just fiction, it was McKenna's attempt to process his own experiences of violence, cultural displacement, and moral confusion. The most heartbreaking detail? McKenna died of a heart attack at age 51, just months before the film's release, never knowing that his personal struggle would become an Academy Award-nominated Hollywood epic. His wife later revealed that writing the novel was both therapeutic and torturous for McKenna, who would sometimes wake up screaming from nightmares while working on the manuscript. This was not just source material, it was a cry for help from a man haunted by his past, transformed into art that would eventually reach millions. The novel and film stand as a testament to how personal trauma can be transformed into universal storytelling, a legacy that McKenna never lived to fully appreciate. The Sand Pebbles stands today not just as a classic war film, but as a monument to the chaos, controversy, and compromise that birthed true art. What we see on screen, a powerful story of one man's moral journey in a time of political upheaval, masks the battlefield of egos, budgets, and ideologies that rage behind the camera. From international incidents to personal tragedies, from environmental disasters to revolutionary changes in industry standards, this film survived challenges that would have destroyed lesser productions. The legacy of the Sand Pebbles extends far beyond its artistic achievements. It changed how Hollywood made epic films, how studios managed difficult stars, and how audiences engage with complex political narratives. Its most powerful contribution may be its unflinching look at the moral complexities of war and imperialism, themes that remain strikingly relevant today.